The ancient Stoic philosophers wrote extensively on how we can conquer the inevitable adversity and physical suffering that comes with life. And one of the main things they all emphasized was the primacy of the mind's role in shaping our experiences, dictating whether we perceive events positively or negatively depending on the judgments we form. When something bad happens to us, like we lose our job or we get rejected or we miss out on an important opportunity, the Stoics teach that it's our judgments about these events that cause us stress, anxiety, and ultimately suffering, rather than the events themselves. It's possible to experience these so-called bad events without getting upset and without suffering, and in fact many people do. For a very basic example of the concept, think of the contrast between the businessman furious at getting caught in the rain versus the child delighted at the opportunity to splash through the puddles. In this case, the two individuals have the same circumstances, but they experience it in radically different ways because of the judgments they form about their circumstances. Now, usually the judgments we form are very implicit and automatic, so they have the appearance of being immutable. But one of the foundational pillars of Stoicism is that through practice we can learn to identify and start noticing these judgments we form about our circumstances and then ultimately control them. And then what this allows us to do is maintain a positive outlook regardless of what's going on around us. We control our internal states and don't become so attached to the external states. Now, of course, very few people would argue against this in theory. But in practice, it can be far easier said than done to control our judgments and maintain a positive attitude in less trivial cases than getting caught in the rain, like in financial difficulty or in poor health. But the Stoics were very wise, and they went through a lot of adversity themselves, so they of course knew this very well. And so the ancient Stoic literature is rife with various teachings, thinking patterns, and new lenses through which we can view the strongest pain and adversity that human beings typically face. A lot of these teachings can be very powerful psychologically for altering how we view pain and adversity. Pain in particular can be quite tricky, since of course there's an element to it that it's unavoidable regardless of what thoughts you conjure up. But Seneca, a Stoic philosopher who suffered his entire life with various chronic ailments, argues that typically we make physical suffering far worse than it needs to be due to the thoughts we conjure up about it. Here's what he has to say on the matter. One can endure the suffering which disease entails if one has come to regard the results with scorn. But do not of your own accord make your troubles heavier to bear and burden yourself with complaining. Pain is slight if opinion has added nothing to it. But if, on the other hand, you begin to encourage yourself and say, "It is nothing, a trifling matter at most," keep a stout heart and it will soon cease. Then in thinking it slight, you will make it slight. Everything depends on opinion. Ambition, luxury, greed, hark back to opinion. It is according to opinion that we suffer. A man is as wretched as he has convinced himself that he is. Now this quote is from Seneca's Letters from a Stoic. In this particular letter, he's giving his friend Lucilius advice on how to bear the weight of illness. Two of the main themes throughout are firstly altering how we look at the illness, changing our judgments about it, seeing it as a trifle, as Seneca says. Essentially, the goal is to genuinely judge it to be of insignificance, to be a very minor matter, be a mild discomfort at most. Which, by the way, isn't just the same as saying that to yourself, knowing that it's false. Of course, that might be a way to help yourself change your judgment, but ultimately the Stoics want us to really alter our judgments in a genuine manner, and they do believe we are capable of that. Second theme is shifting our focus from our pain and illness onto other things. And one of these methods that he suggests is thinking about our most courageous achievements in life. Times that we really displayed a strong will in order to remind ourselves what we're capable of enduring. Then after that, he tells us to think of the extreme things that other people have endured. Then think of all the brave men who have conquered pain. Of him who continued to read his book as he allowed the cutting out of varicose veins. of him who did not cease to smile, though that very smile so enraged his torturers that they tried upon him every instrument of their cruelty. If pain can be conquered by a smile, will it not be conquered by reason? A particular interpretation of this passage that I like to take, and that's helped me with dealing with chronic illness myself, is to specifically think about what our ancestors have endured. No matter who you are, you have a long line of ancestors spanning back hundreds of thousands of years. And these ancestors endured monumental amounts of pain, suffering, and adversity so that you could exist. As a European, I think of my ancestors braving the extreme cold for hours on end, just trying to find something to hunt to feed their family. Or if you're from a tropical hot country, think of your ancestors having to hunt for hours in the baking hot sun. Our ancestors endured extreme cold, extreme heat, hunger, thirst. Many of them experienced bloody battles and violent conflicts in which they might have been seriously injured or even lost limbs. They will have watched their fellow man being cut down right next to them. They might have had to fight off dangerous animals trying to rip their throat out. They explored unknown territories, navigating extremely harsh environments and conditions, all on foot. They would have suffered sickness and injury just like us, but without the utility of modern medicine to deal with it. Throughout all of history and all of the world, creatures of all sorts, including our ancestors, push through the harshest conditions and suffering and just keep moving forward. And I like to remind myself that the blood of these people runs through us. Their genes are present in us. A part of them has carried forward into the future. And so to face challenges with anything less than the unwavering fortitude that they exhibited is to dishonor our lineage. Now the point isn't just to think, oh look, you're a pathetic weakling, look what all these people did. Your problems are meaningless, blah blah blah. But rather the teaching is quite self-affirming. It reminds us of what human beings are capable of enduring, and that we are forged with the genes of these people. When you recall the scale of both human suffering and human resilience, and remember that you're forged from the same materials, the same genes as people who underwent such extreme adversity, it's far easier to alter your judgments about your own difficulties, and to genuinely hold the opinion that they are nothing compared to what you have the tools to overcome.